Can't you see the similarities between us? Take a minute and see yourself in the mirror. You look like me, those eyes, lips, you can't deny. Have you thought about why we look the same? Why we feel the same? Don't tell me it's by chance. Oh, you're my brother, you're my sister, we're one big family. Oh, oh, you're my brother, you're my sister, just one big family.
Hello people, and thanks once again for joining us in this episode of CAG International World Talk. So today, by the grace of Almighty, we will be virtually touring one of the countries in South Asia. This country is documented to be the world's second largest Muslim population. It was documented to have the world's second largest Muslim population, and this country itself is the 33rd largest country in the world. So we're touring a very big country that has various diversities itself and various ethnicities itself. So this is going to be a very long tour, and it's going to consist of um, great lessons. So ladies and gentlemen, join me as we tour Pakistan. So with me today is a friend of mine. She's a co-student. She's also, aside from being a co-ambassador of the street team, Isra is also a junior coordinator of what we call the Campus Activities Board. She's the president of the Muslim Student Association in Dallas College. So Isra has this experience, she has this exposure dealing with diverse people of different backgrounds. She's as well the current student ambassador of Honor Student Organization in Dallas College as well. So ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I present to you Isra.
Hello, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. I will start off by saying that I'm really happy that you decided to do this, and that I'm even more happy that you invited me for this project. I hope that I can do justice to Pakistan and that I can give you a really good tour.
You've been doing a very great job. That was why you invited. And I
Hopefully.
hope you do justice to the topic. So once again, Isra, the topic is what are the causes of diversities among the human race, and what are the possible practicable solutions?
Okay, so I think the way we should go with this is that I should give you a little bit of a tour of Pakistan, and then we can kind of talk about diversity and how it's influenced, or what are the triggers that actually cause diversity. All right, so Pakistan it's not a really old country as people actually think it is. It's actually just 72 years old or 73 years old when it was created in 1947, on August 14th, 1947 to be exact. Yeah. So it's genuinely a younger country as compared to the other countries, especially like America, Canada, or even India itself, where Pakistan used to be a part of India until 1947, until the British government was getting ready to leave the Indian subcontinent. So that's when this division happened, and that's how Pakistan was created. So Pakistan was created on the basis of religion, and it's the first country in the world to be created on the basis of religion. What I mean by that is that majority of India, even though there are Muslims there, but the constitution and the religious practices and so on, majority of it is with Hinduism, and Pakistan is an Islamic country, or it's a Muslim country. And when we used to all live together, there used to be a great divide sort of a thing where Muslims and Hindus were constantly fighting each other because of some religious beliefs that we had that really contradicted each other. For example, Hindus, they worship cows, and they worship, they're mostly vegetarian. They don't kill, in the sense that as Muslims, we on every Eid al-Adha, we slaughter either a cow or a goat or something like that in the name of Allah. We worship a masjid and so on. So those conflicts were really quintessential in all of our religious beliefs, and both Indians and Pakistanis are really super religious, or at least belief-wise, we're pretty strict about it. So that kind of kept creating fights, and like somebody would hurt someone else, and that would create a bigger fight. So just to end it, it was found to be better if Muslims had our own country where we could have our own laws that we operated under. We would have our own justice system and so on and so forth. So the founder of Pakistan is actually Quaid-e-Azam. He's nicknamed Quaid-e-Azam, which in Urdu means the great leader. He's the founding father of Pakistan. He was a lawyer. He graduated from, I believe, a university in Britain, and his name is Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Having Pakistan, or fighting for Pakistan, was his idea and his passion. And he, unfortunately, after the creation of Pakistan, he died within a year. So he didn't really get to be the president of Pakistan, but he was definitely a core person who really helped create the constitution and who really helped create Pakistan itself.
And for the country to get its independence, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you,
So,
Ms. Fair, for that great introduction. So before we go deep into the topic itself, looking at Pakistan from 1947 up to today, that's like 73 years. So how was humanity like there? I mean, how do Pakistan see relating with one another, working with one another? Is there any bias or conflict among Pakistanis themselves?
Totally. So I don't think any country is truly free of conflict within itself, especially when it comes to ethnic groups or when it comes to racism. So Pakistan is made of 4 or 5 provinces, and see, when Pakistan was created, a large number of Muslims migrated from India to Pakistan. My ancestors were part of those who migrated. We are called muhajir, which in Arabic means somebody who travels.
Right.
So muhajir are people who left their home country, which means their lands and their whatever else they had. For example, most of the people who migrated from India to Pakistan who were Muslims were sort of like lords and nawabs, and they had really big palaces and really huge grounds. They had a lot of fields and so on. So in exchange of like having a country created, we needed money to fuel that change, or we needed money to create a country. So a lot of those people who migrated from India to Pakistan brought their money and wealth with them in exchange for freedom, in exchange for creating something for the next generations. The problem happened that because it was through train and through walking, like people would walk or they would go through trains and whatever, a lot of bloodshed happened in that time, where Hindus and British soldiers, everybody kept attacking those who were wealthy, just so they could cripple Pakistan, or they could cripple the creation of Pakistan. So what ended up happening was that the government sort of had this agreement, on paper at least, that those who had whatever land in India were leaving that behind to come to Pakistan. That same equivalent land would be traded with them. So if they were wealthy here, they'd be wealthy here as well. But unfortunately, because of the transit and because of the fear and the chaos and all that turmoil, that part kind of got usurped from those who were supposed to inherit it by those who were already on the land of Pakistan. So those
Right.
people who didn't have to migrate, they call themselves sons of soils, which basically means that they say that no, this land was our forefathers, even though they themselves were actually farmers and workers. They didn't own the land. That land was actually owned by Hindu who went back to
Migrated.
India.
Right.
Yeah. So that land, piece of land, was actually supposed to be offered to those who were leaving their lands in India to come to Pakistan.
Pakistan.
So
Right.
that, yeah, when that usurping happened, it sort of caused a lot of document forgery. It caused a lot of issues where now those who used to work on the land suddenly grabbed those lands and they became lords of the lands now. So when the Mahajir came and asked for their right, it's like, no, it doesn't exist because you're not the son of soil. Your land is actually back in India. So another thing that happened was, it's a really interesting thing. So I'm from a place called Karachi, or my parents are from a place called Karachi, which is located in Sindh. It's right next to the sea, and Karachi is the only city in Pakistan which generates a 75% or more income for the entire country. It's the only most developed country in the world, or in at least Pakistan. So Karachi is where most of the Mahajir ended up living because of the fact that when we crossed the border from India, people who were already on the land, or sons of soils, kept saying that no, Pakistan is further ahead, you're still in the Indian jurisdiction, even though they had well crossed the Pakistan border. So that ended up pushing us all the way towards Karachi. So it sort of created this cultural mix where we had the North Indian, like most of the people who migrated were from North India, who spoke Urdu, who spoke Persian, and those were the languages of the royalties, or those were the languages of prince and so on. So
Let me
Urdu was
ask you a quick question there, Isra.
yeah.
So does this migration causes the diversity in terms of language?
Not only that, language, culture, education, everything. Because see, the people who actually created Pakistan were highly, highly educated people. They knew exactly what needed to happen to have a country. The rest of Pakistan was just farmers, they were just workers, or they would be just people who'd be living in villages. They had no idea what education was. They were still of the mentality that no, as soon as the girl is like 16 or 12, she should be married and so on.
Right.
Yeah. So education and everything came from the migrants or the immigrants. So when that happened, it created sort of a divide in the country where a highly concentrated area of people was really extremely educated and the rest of Pakistan wasn't. So we established the government, we established the train railway system, we established the trade, we established the movie industry and everything. And before it could actually catch on roots, the sons of soils got this right idea where they kind of used the military to kind of create this dictatorship where they would kind of suppress the people in Karachi by saying that no, Karachi is part of Pakistan, so everybody should benefit from Karachi, but they wouldn't give us resources to keep it at top level. Example would be that the Sindh government, which is the Sindh province's government, like a Texas governor or whatever, Sindh governor wouldn't give or release resources for Karachi city. So the sewers are all clogged up. The current situation is that there's a lot of disease. There's a lot of broken roads, and there's a lot of issues with public education in the sense that it's not the top-notch quality as it should be. And anywhere, there used to be this thing called anybody who's a Mahajir or anybody whose parents were immigrants, they're not allowed in the military. Like on paper, it's completely fine. Nobody discriminates against it. But in reality, the sitting officer who's in charge, they discriminate a lot. And they're like, where are you from behind? That's a question they would ask. Like behind means that they're wanting to know where are your parents from? Because we're now the third or the fourth generation who's been living in Pakistan. And so for some reason, they're always under this impression that, oh no, because you're a Mahajir, you don't belong to this country. And Mahajirs have always been accused of being agents of RA, which is like Indian intelligence. We've always been accused of terrorism. We've always been accused of dividers of the country, because they're under the impression that just because we made Pakistan, we're going to further divide Pakistan into smaller pieces, even though that's not the case. Even though all these conflicts are happening, I feel like there are some places where people don't even like care about these conflicts, and in other cases, they are so severely impacted by it that there's nothing but conflict there. So it
Yeah,
depends on where you go and who you ask about what's the current situation in Pakistan, sort of a deal.
thank you. I really learned a lot there. Thank you. So as of today, Israel, um,
hmm
does the whole country, the whole of Pakistan, still depend on your city, Karachi, in terms of source of income, source of growth?
Yes, absolutely. So
Yes,
most of
today?
Pakistan, yes, most of Pakistan is still the literacy rate, the highest literacy rate in Pakistan comes from Karachi, to the point where now there are people coming from other provinces, from Punjab, from Balochistan, from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, to get education from Karachi because we have one of the world's best medical programs. We've generated or produced one of the world's best doctors. Those doctors are immediately hired as soon as you graduate from Karachi's university. You get hired immediately by foreign companies who want to take you to America, to Canada, to Britain. So most of our youth who are in medical professions choose to stay within Pakistan because we also have this drive of service where we say that no, if we don't help fix our country, who's going to do that? So a lot of the times there are good souls who don't leave the country because they feel like they can do more in service for the people by staying in the country and helping the way they can.
That's really great. So looking at the migration that happens from people moving from Indian to Pakistan as of
hmm
then. So first question is, did that still happen till today?
No, not to my knowledge. There's like the borders, or if you see the map a little bit, you see that Pakistan and India are literally at the same border. And the border that stretches between Pakistan and India, there's this like, it's not actual walls or anything like that. It's just an imaginary divide on the land on a piece of
Uh,
map. But in reality, there's no fence, there's no wall or anything like that. So the villagers of the neighboring borders sometimes don't understand when has the Pakistan jurisdiction began, and vice versa. They don't understand when the Indian jurisdiction has begun. So their animals can literally cross over, and so when they chase after their animals, the governments kind of capture those people as not prisoners of war, but as unauthorized personnel on the soil. So this also causes a lot of conflict between India and Pakistan, where they wouldn't release our prisoners, we wouldn't release theirs, and then there's all these accusations that, oh no, you did this back in 2003, you did this back in 1989, and so on and so forth. So it's been a lot of back and forth with India specifically.
that has been part of what has been causing the conflict between India and Pakistan.
Yes, in addition to see, Pakistan will always say that India has always kind of been jealous of Pakistan because, number one, we're primarily Muslim, so courage is not an issue for us. We have one of the strongest militaries in the world, and
Right.
our youth or our people actually want to get enlisted in the military for the honor of being a shaheed. So they don't fear death, and that sort of causes this innate fear in Indian government where they're constantly at the fence from Pakistan. Like, I'm sure both governments have had their hands to play with it. But India is sort of still bitter about breaking subcontinent because, see, when we got our independence, originally Pakistan was in two sides. It was East Pakistan and West Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. These were
Mm,
two Muslim majority countries that Pakistan originally created. So if Pakistan was still one, or Bangladesh hadn't broken away from us till now, then we would have one of the strongest, which is say, tactical advantage over India. So
right.
that breaking of India sort of triggered a chain reaction within India itself, where because India has more diversity than Pakistan does in terms of culture, in terms of language, and in terms of religious beliefs.
Right.
So when Pakistan got separated, it sort of started this chain reaction where everyone else in India also wanted freedom. So that's when Sri Lanka became on its own, and I believe Thailand sort of separated themselves, and so on and so forth. So it's further created a divide after Pakistan was created. So I personally feel like that kind of triggers that animosity of breaking the country, where they hold Pakistan accountable for all this happening, even though it was due to their suppression that really caused that divide to happen in the first place. But who's counting, you know?
Right. So let's move from let me just say friendly conflict. I wouldn't say
Mm-hmm.
disagreement. I would say friendly conflicts between the people of India and the people of Pakistan. So
See, that's the thing. So we don't have it. The animosity is just at the government level. Pakistani people love watching Indian movies, and
right,
Indian people love watching Pakistani drama and
right.
Pakistani sitcom, because we're really good at comedy and we're really good at those
Yeah, I mean, as
series
of
kind of
today, I
stories.
can see lots of cordial
Mm-hmm.
relationship between you guys.
Mm-hmm. So it's the people themselves don't fight. It's the government that instills the fear or the agenda or the propaganda that no, you're innately supposed to hate each other. So one of the good things that I like about sports is that it really helps you kind of have that friendly animosity sort of a thing. Where if you've ever watched cricket, you must know that India and Pakistan are one of the biggest matches to watch whenever they play against each other, because of the fact that our cultures are so similar, because of the fact that we understand each other's languages, and the fact that we're both fanatically crazy about cricket, at least majority of our population is. So
Right.
that sort of creates that friendly environment where our players, when our players go to India, they're treated well because we love cricket, and vice versa. When their players come over to our home grounds, we treat them well. So it sort of sends out this really nice message of friendliness. Even though we've had this history, we still know how to move past our differences, at least on a people's level, not on the governmental level.
Hmm. So, as Abraham Lincoln declared during the Second Civil War, he was saying that democracy should be the government of the people for the people, and
Mm-hmm.
and that shouldn't stop from existing at the surface of the earth. So, can you please advise, since you both citizens of India and Pakistan loves one another, they are able to work with one another. Can you please advise the government and make them understand that it is very possible for the government themselves to work together? Since you people being the citizen of the country, which you are the people, and if the
Mm-hmm.
people can be able to work together, that's the democracy.
Well, yes, my message directly would be that Pakistan is always, in most cases, willing to lend a friendly hand. It's always been, or most of the time, it's been on the Indian Prime Minister's side, where they either don't show up to the meeting, or they straight out just deny it, or they start accusing Pakistan of their own terrorist acts or whatever else is going on within the country. Sort of like Trump, where because the economy is bad in America, he starts blaming immigrants. That's sort of the same way that's happening in India, where anything that's going wrong in India innately is just Pakistan's fault without the
Right.
actual government's issue. Same thing with Pakistan, where Pakistan doesn't blame India, but it does kind of keeps us as in the people looped up with our own political issues so much that we can't see the bigger picture. At least those of us who are still in Pakistan really don't care nor have the time to kind of worry about the government because of the day-to-day hardship that they face, even in the most advanced and most developed cities within Pakistan. So I think I will straight up say it. I feel like our government is corrupted, like it is with any other third world country or the
Right.
second world country, where you don't trust the government. There's a really big gap between what the government wants versus what the people need.
Hmm.
So that's what I feel like our country is. Like if you really need to improve the country, the first thing you have to do is improve the government. And at this point, it's so messed up that people don't
But
even know where to
there is
start.
no government, Israel. There is no any government without the people.
Mm-hmm.
You accept?
But see, that's the thing. Ours is sort of like a puppet government. So the original people who are pulling the strings are called the establishment. So that establishment sometimes comes from first world country powers. Sometimes that establishment or that dictatorship comes from our military, who's doing the bidding of other countries. So the people in power don't care about
A
Pakistan's
quick question,
well-being. They
Isra.
only
Is Pakistan a democratic government or a military government?
It's a democratic government, but it's already had a martial law in its 72 years history. It's already had about 2 or 3 martial laws of 10 years each. So it's a new democracy in the sense that as soon as we got our independence, a couple years later, we had a military coup and the martial law began. After that, for 5 or 6 years, we had a democracy, and then again we had another martial law. The most recent one was back in 2008. And the thing is that every 10 years or so, the government kind of triggers the martial law itself in the sense that we've been under a martial law longer than we have under democracy. So we don't know how democracy works in the sense that we don't know that the people have the power to vote, the people have the power to change the government or whatever. And then there are a lot of like political interests that people have that kind of prevent us from actually exercising our right as a democratic country.
Right.
But yes, we're a democracy. We're supposed to be a democracy.
Great. So that's a long one, Isra. That's a long one. So let's just conclude that if truly democracy is should be the government of the people for the people, that means we can conclude by saying there is peace, there is unity among the people of both countries. People are the government, even if the government are not succumbing themselves to be the people. So we can conclude by saying that there is unity and cooperation among Pakistan and Indians. So let's take it out of that issue. Generally, looking at the world generally, looking at people of different backgrounds, different culture, different languages. It might not be people from India or people from Pakistan. It might not be people from my country, Nigeria. It might not be people from Russia. So generally, looking at the world issue, what do you think are the causes of diversities, be it in terms of any human factors?
The causes of diversity specifically are immigration. Causes could be inter-country relationships, where, for example, between, just as an example, between France and Britain, there would be a pact or an agreement, or even Jordan and Palestine, where they have this agreement with each other that, okay, our people can seek refuge with you. Same thing with Pakistan and Afghanistan, the countries of war, where we kind of stand in support of them and we say that, okay, our country is open to your people because we understand that y'all are under war and that you guys need help and so on. We won't intervene in the war, but we can provide refuge to your people just until your country stabilizes. So these are all different factors that cause diversity in a location. Now, to keep that diversity and to improve on it, I feel like is a more pivotal role of the people and the government together, where we both need to be accepting of somebody else's culture as well as their language and their values. If we're not considerate of these things, it sort of generates this animosity where you're actually feeling like you're being antagonized based off of your belief or your skin color or the language that you speak or the background that you come from. And that shouldn't be the case, especially if we're becoming a more globalized world on a daily basis, where people are moving, are having an easier way to move from one country to another, or they can kind of call other people from other countries like their siblings or whatever, and that kind of creates that pot pool of inclusivity. So I think diversity and inclusivity must go hand in hand if we want to benefit from it as a community or as just the world, if we want to just help out each other and each other's needs, as well as stand there for each other when somebody else needs you.
So what do you think can be solutions to way to work together, irrespective of this diversity?
Right.
How do you think we can work together?
So the first thing I will say is people
First thing is,
need
do
to
you
understand.
believe we can work together? Do you believe it's possible?
Yes, I believe in the better part of humanity, where I would think that people should look at people as people. Then that sort of generates that compassion. And I think compassion is the basis of being able to move and work together, where we're all looking out for each other's interests as well as our own, just on a humanitarian ground or humanitarian basis.
So most people, from what we've learned from previous presentation is generational inheritance. What we call
Mhm.
generational inheritance, the mentality that has been instilled in most people from their
Mhm.
parents, their grandparents, their ancestors. So this is still functioning today, and people are still upholding to such.
I think you bring up a good point, and I believe I agree with you in terms of generational inheritance, where if you want change, you have to change within yourselves and you have to change within your homes first. So this isn't something that can happen in a couple of months or even a couple of years if we all really do want to have that place of where the world's organizations are cooperating with each other and the country bases or country governments are cooperating with one another for the sole interest of better human rights in as a whole, right? So I think that mentality has to stem from yourself and your own house. Of course, you can't do anything to your parents in the sense that you can't tell them to correct their thinking because they're too tightly knit with that mindset. But what you can do is understand the changes happening within yourself and then teach that change to your children. Teach it to our younger generation. And I think schools and institutions have a very big role to play in the next few generations,
Right.
especially if you want us to work together, especially if you want us to feel that no, humans first, and then we look at borders and like who did this, who did wrong. But the first thing you got to do is look at things from a humanitarian perspective first.
So one last
Yes.
question, Isha. One last
Mhm.
question. Um, we've seen people of different languages, people of different backgrounds, people of different religion working successfully together.
Mhm.
Working successfully together. So there is this one very great point that I've been seeking indulgence of my invitees is this generational inheritance. It's a very big one
Mhm.
because this is mentality. This is not something we can see and cop. It is something that
Mhm.
live within people. So aside from education, trying to work within yourself before working on people, aside from all of this, what do you think, if I try to practice this, people can learn
Mhm.
from it. So how do we think we can upgrade ourselves wherever we find ourselves, you know, to try as much as we can to convince people, either old people, either young people.
See, the thing that I can tell you for sure from experience is that you gotta you gotta walk the talk as well. So your
Right,
actions need to corroborate your preaching, and your
right,
lifestyle needs to accommodate that which you want others to do. That's the first step. The second step would be acceptance at all levels. You can't be in a position where you're like, oh, well, we'll accept everybody who's diverse, but we won't accept a certain group. For example, we won't accept anybody from a European descent, or we won't accept anybody from a certain country, or we won't accept anybody from a certain religious background. Because you're still creating that divide, you're still creating that
division,
exclusivity. Yeah, you're still being exclusive, you're not being inclusive. And for
right,
this plan to work, especially over generations, we
mhm,
need to ourselves be open to change, and we ourselves need to be open and understanding to diversity and what good that can bring, in addition to helping out more people, in addition to just learning about other things. So I think a good way to start is just creating that hunger or that curiosity within yourself about learning about different things. Be
right.
educating yourself about, okay, understanding
And
from
be ready and
okay,
willing
what
to
does
change.
yes, yes. So willingness to change is, I think, a very good stepping stone for this community that we'd like to build together. And then education comes in as well, where willingness to change as well as education paired together should be the first move for anybody who wants to create that environment of safety, where nobody would feel judged, nobody feels ashamed of where they're from, nobody feels that, oh no, I can't go here because of X reasons or Y reasons. Everybody should feel like, no, I belong here. That's why I should go there.
Right. Thank you so much, Isra. It's been a long talk.
Yes.
I've really learned a lot about Pakistan and as well as Indian of, most things I don't know before today. And you really shared great points with us. And I hope people are learning from this and trying to uphold to these thoughts, try to practice these thoughts. It is very possible that we all work together, irrespective of any human factors that might want to
Mhm.
diversify us. It is very possible that we all work together. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Isra, and we appreciate you coming. Thank you very much, and you have a great one, Isra.
You too. Have a great afternoon.
It doesn't matter if you live far away from me. You feel, I feel. You bleed, I bleed. You cry and I cry. We sleep and dream. Sometimes we're sad, sometimes we're happy.